Hello everyone, welcome to the School of Creativity, and I am artist educator Valeria Krylova. Today I suggest painting a seascape like this one, a boat on the shore. You can use different materials. Both oil and acrylic as well as gouache are suitable. I will be demonstrating with oil paints. And here is the palette I suggest. White. Naples yellow is a warm, earthy yellow color. Cadmium yellow light is a bright, vibrant yellow. Cadmium orange is a rich, deep orange. Gold ochre is a golden brown hue. Light ochre is a pale, yellowish brown. Burnt umber is a dark, reddish brown. Indigo is a deep, dark blue. Ultramarine is a vivid, bright blue. Dark red cochineal is a deep crimson red. Naples pink is a soft pastel pink. And dark cobalt violet is a deep purple hue. Some paints can be substituted. For example, if there is no cadmium yellow light, you can use medium yellow or lemon yellow, as I see such a bright yellow shade on the mountains in the light. Cadmium orange can be mixed from cochineal and yellow. Purple, dark cobalt violet can also be mixed, and we will try to do this using ultramarine, cochineal, and Naples pink. I must say that my colors may not match between different manufacturers and the names of oil. And acrylic paints may also differ. So be sure to assess the situation. In this particular case, it is indeed more significant to build up darkness in tone and to show such bright light through that darkness rather than focusing on color. Perhaps in the final stages I will add black color, specifically lamp black, if I see that the depth is lacking. I will definitely add lamp black. For the brushes, we have background brushes in sizes 14 and 16, medium brushes in sizes 6 and 16, and smaller brushes in sizes 4, 6, and 8. When working with details, and of course for drawing the sea, you can definitely use a liner brush with long bristles. Palette knives can always come in handy, and with a bristle brush, you can absolutely add texture to the foam. So the bristle brush will also be used today. You can find a complete description of the materials in the description below the video. But I will say that you should paint with the materials on the canvases or perhaps on the paper that you are used to and that you find comfortable to paint on. The same goes for brushes. Surely everyone has their favorite brushes. If the speed of the video is too fast for you and sometimes mixing takes a little longer, you can reduce the playback speed in the settings. Now, let's get started. We will begin by creating an initial detailed preliminary sketch to lay the foundation for our project. I will make a preliminary sketch with a small brush, using linseed oil as a medium. For the sketch, I can use pink paint or ultramarine. I will choose ultramarine because I am afraid the pink will not be visible on camera. In any case, we should not use purple as it is too bright, and we should avoid cochineal as well. As for warm colors, I think we should only use ochres. We won't be using yellow or orange. Naples yellow will be suitable for preliminary sketch. The main thing is that we dilute the oil to a bit this semi-transparent state. I sometimes see that white paint is added to achieve transparency. Today we have a rather dark work, and we cannot add white paint because if, for example, white color gets into the depth under the boat or into the base of the pebbles, it may prevent us from achieving such a contrasting darkness. And we will start with the waterline. The waterline is slightly below the middle. I mark the center of the canvas with a dot, and below the center is where the water goes. We will constantly check and carefully adjust this line because during the blending process it might shift. So for now I will just draw a line. We have mountains in the distance, and again Somewhere from the middle, large stones begin to appear and scatter around. I hold the brush almost by the very tip, and this consistency of the paint allows me to glide smoothly and effortlessly across the canvas. Here we have a steep cliff forming, creating a dramatic and breathtaking scene. Here we will definitely use the color yellow. For the moon, I do not recommend getting into color here. I always definitely recommend at least put a little dot with just white paint. So the rocks are going into the water, but here the foam is already starting. Here is definitely the foam. And we also have stones of a more grayish color on the adjacent side. We will certainly also mark them. We will give shape using either a palette knife or a brush in color. Here, a diagonal line goes like this. This way, you can catch the angle of inclination and transfer it to the canvas so that it's not too straight, just like the stones end here, and a wave is already retreating from the shore. Foam. And here is just the right place for sand. So I painted it aloud, but to check myself, I bring the brush to the reference and look, yes, it's good. Here it could even be lowered a bit for the boat. We prepare as the rocks end right away, so that there's enough space for the boat again. A wave is coming, rising somewhere around the moon. The base of the wave goes smoothly, well, just a little bit actually, to the canvas so that it's not too straight, just like the stones end here, and a wave is already retreating from the shore. Foam. And here is just the right place for sand. So I painted it aloud, but to check myself, I bring the brush to the reference and look. Yes, it's good. Here, it could even be lowered a bit for the boat. We prepare as the rocks end right away so that there's enough space for the boat again. A wave is coming, rising somewhere around the moon. The base of the wave goes smoothly, well, just a little bit actually. By evenly, I mean without any curves, but just a little bit diagonally. Well, you can take it parallel, or you can take a slightly larger angle than the foam, which is often recommended for better results. The main thing is that in the area of the moon, it rises in this way and goes behind other stones. And if I extend this line, then right here a little gap, which will be quite noticeable and significant, will form, and the wave, which is powerful and relentless, will break against the stone, which is solid and unyielding. We will now very carefully outline only the largest areas of foam like this. Let's make sure that the foam carefully reaches the rocks and completely overlaps them here, ensuring it thoroughly covers everything. And because of the boat, due to the movement of the boat and the gentle waves, the foam covers the base of these two stones. To draw a boat, I always start with the nearest edge. Should I paint it so that it is more visible? To draw the boat, you should start with the nearest edge a bit. The boat is currently positioned here at an angle near the edge, and the storm is also significantly affecting it. The first line, the second line. I lower it down, and I can even make it larger if I want to. It seems to me that at the bottom, with sand, it is not high at all, but rather quite low. Yes, the sand is right here, sand, water, and everything else. This is how it is completed, finally. We are looking at it from a bit above, so the seats, a row of seats, are very clearly visible here. The arrangement of the seats is quite distinct, and you can see each one clearly from this vantage point. This is how our preliminary sketch has been completed in great detail. I want to erase any extra lines that may have appeared now, as well as remove any unwanted excess oil paint currently. And the napkin, besides picking up the excess oil, can also be used to refine the outlines of the mountains. Excess oil in the work can be a hindrance. Therefore, we need to ensure that the oil, including that from the preliminary sketch and any other sources, does not come into our work. So I'm currently using a napkin to clean up the excess. I also forgot to show you one more line. Here is the foam, and here is the crest of the wave. We still have. This is how the wave curves. The line goes here in a smooth manner. You can draw it smoothly here, as you can see. I can definitely even extend it a little bit further here. One line is a bit sharper and the other is flatter, so that it is clear to see the difference between them. And we will start working on the background with you. Here are two colors I prepared. The first one is a light pink that begins near the moon, and then it transitions into purple. This transition is very subtle and creates a beautiful gradient effect that adds depth to the painting. But in order for these contrasts to be noticeable to the eye, I would like to cover the black areas. The black areas can be quite stark and can detract from the overall effect we are trying to achieve. Now I will take a medium brush, almost without oil, on dry, and in a blending technique, I want to use indigo. Indigo is a deep, rich color that can add a lot of depth and dimension to the painting. I will apply it as if I am rubbing it into the canvas, going over the darkest spots. This technique helps to blend the colors seamlessly and creates a smooth transition between the different shades. We will create the final outlines with a second layer, but right now I need this darkness to understand the color of the sky, including the waves, because without the dark, we won't see the light. The darkness is essential for creating contrast and making the lighter areas stand out. So now, in a blending technique, without any precise elements, we will go over the dark areas. And when our eyes are oriented towards the darkness, it will help us better understand the tone of the light areas. The blending technique involves using gentle circular motions to blend the colors together. The boat can be a focal point in the painting, and by using this technique we can create a sense of movement and fluidity in the water. The light areas will appear more vibrant and luminous against the dark background, creating a striking visual effect. This process requires patience and attention to detail, but the end result will be worth it. The contrast between the dark and light areas will create a dynamic and visually appealing composition. By carefully blending the colors and paying attention to the transitions, we can create a painting that is both beautiful and captivating. The key is to take our time and not rush the process. allowing the colors to blend naturally and create a harmonious effect. The final result will be a painting that is rich in color and depth, with a beautiful balance between light and dark. I am now just wiping off the excess oil, and I can also really paint the interior part of the boat. The boat is completely dark. But because of this darkness, and due to the presence of this darkness, the accents on the mountains and the waves are able to shine extremely brightly. To avoid losing the outlines, you can carefully and clearly mark them with a stick or a brush. Artists are often apprehensive about working with dark colors, but now you will see that, of course, such a night landscape cannot be painted without darkness. During the process, these dark strokes on the shore, for example, will be lightened, so we don't worry about that. As for the mountains, you can see that it is already quite dark. There. We will even mark this little stone with a darker color, and we will definitely darken the sea a bit. We will mark the darkest color spots without outlining any precise details. The paint is applied lightly, but the canvas is sometimes still visible. When we use very little paint, as here, the squares of the canvas can still be seen. The base of the wave can be emphasized. This line often gets lost and lightens during the process. However, something will definitely lighten. It is often more challenging to build up darkness in painting than to lighten it. So initially we have gone over the main dark spots in this way, and now I will set this brush aside and take a larger brush. We will mark the darkest color spots without outlining any precise details. The paint is applied lightly, but the canvas is sometimes still visible. When we use very little paint, as here, the squares of the canvas can still be seen. The base of the wave can be emphasized. This line often gets lost and lightens during the process. However, something will definitely lighten. It is often more challenging to build up darkness in painting than to lighten it. So, initially, we have gone over the main dark spots in this way, and now I will set this brush aside and take a larger brush. You have the option to place the small boat immediately, without any delay, right away. This means you can set it down as soon as you want, without waiting. I take a large brush with a steady hand, and now I am carefully and precisely returning these two auxiliary rectangles to mix the desired shade of color to achieve the perfect blend. I carefully and gently wipe the oil on the palette that I used for the preliminary sketch, delicately. And let's see what we will mix. Before starting to work with the brush, I slightly moisten the tip of the brush in oil, just a little, but enough so that nothing drips off. So, I recommend perhaps taking Neapolitan pink and Neapolitan yellow. Add just a drop of indigo. To make the yellow slightly dirty, I will start working with this little dot where I placed it. By the way, you can even cover this dot. We can also paint the moon on top. Let's take Neapolitan yellow, Neapolitan pink, and indigo, using a thicker paint. We will be covering an area approximately like this, so make sure you have enough paint. This color will also appear somewhere on the waves and highlights, so it's a good idea to mix a bit extra paint. If you are painting with oil, you can mix extra, but if you are using acrylics, you won't be able to mix extra here since it dries quickly. You can try adding a little bit of carmine. To make the yellow slightly dirty, I will start working with this little dot where I placed it. By the way, you can even cover this dot. We can also paint the moon on top. Let's take Neapolitan yellow, Neapolitan pink, and indigo, using a thicker paint. We will be covering an area approximately like this, so make sure you have enough paint. This color will also appear somewhere on the waves and highlights, so it's a good idea to mix a bit extra paint. If you are painting with oil, you can mix extra, but if you are using acrylics, you won't be able to mix extra here since it dries quickly. You can try adding a little bit of carmine. But here it leans more towards yellow, to be honest. This pink is warm. I try to ensure that there are no visible brush strokes. Now I want to add a bit more blue here. I take the beautiful and vibrant shade of ultramarine color. Well, I still have a few more remnants of the previous mixture on my brush, ultramarine plus pink, along the water. There's a small remaining portion of area left right up to edge of canvas. And I want to make it a bit more violet. I can even add some blue here, which will work well higher up too. When we mix ultramarine with pink, we get a bright, somewhat vibrant color. Here we have indigo just to tone down this color a little bit more to the overall effect. The color of the lower rectangle is the color of the upper right corner. We will go there with a darker color. And now ultramarine. We can even add a little bit of white and pink. Mixing paint can often be a more time-consuming process than the actual act of painting itself. This is because achieving the perfect color requires patience and precision. If you find that mixing is taking too long, you have a couple of options. You can either stop the recording to take your time, or you can reduce the playback speed to ensure you don't miss any important steps. Now, let's take a small amount of carmine, which is a deep red pigment, and use it to create a smooth transition between the orange and purple hues. We want to make this transition appear a bit more pinkish, giving it a softer look. Imagine the colors rising and blending together like the sun and the moon in a beautiful twilight sky. As we blend these colors, it's important to remember that you don't need to add too much oil to your brush. Adding too much oil can make the colors too runny and difficult to control. Instead, use just enough to allow the colors to merge seamlessly. Blending is an art in itself, and with practice you'll find the perfect balance. You can use your finger to blend the colors on your eyelid, which is a quick and easy method that many people prefer for its simplicity and convenience. Alternatively, you can take a special blending brush, which is designed specifically for this purpose, and use it to achieve a more precise and professional look. Start by dipping the brush into the pink-orange color, making sure to pick up a good amount of pigment. Then gently apply it to your eyelid, focusing on the area where you want the color to be most intense. Next, clean the brush or use a different one and dip it into the purple color. Carefully blend the purple into the pink-orange, using small circular motions to create a seamless transition between the two colors. This technique will help you achieve a beautiful gradient effect that transitions smoothly from the pink-orange hue into a more purple hue. Remember to take your time and blend thoroughly to avoid any harsh lines or uneven patches. If you want to add even more depth and dimension to your look, you can layer additional colors or use a shimmery eyeshadow on top for a bit of sparkle. Practice makes perfect, so don't be afraid to experiment and find the method that works best for you. We have a beautiful shade of dark cobalt violet. Here it is. Well, it's dark, but we can mix it with white. I would still continue to add indigo so that it wouldn't be such a lilac color, but rather a bit more muted. The second option when we mix ultramarine will also result in a beautiful color, ultramarine carmine. Here you make the necessary adjustments to the red violet or blue violet, but here it's about even slightly. And I seek brightness with white paints to achieve the desired effect. Here, even indigo may not be necessary, and/or. Here are two options for working with purple color. Choose if you are using ready-made paints, for example, dark cobalt violet, which is already mixed from the tube. You take it, but of course, we won't work with the pure color. We will still mix it. You can shift it towards pink by adding pink, or you can shift it towards blue by adding blue. Well, indigo will slightly mute it, making it a bit more calm and relaxed, perhaps even more serene. The sky is vast and expansive, providing us with an almost infinite canvas to work on. However, the paint tends to run out quickly, and we can mix colors without ever hitting the same shade twice. In principle, our actions revolve around the moon, which is significantly lighter in color. The upper right corner of our canvas is much darker, featuring some pinkish tones that can be intensified, as well as some bluish tones. Overall, we achieve a gradient effect starting from the moon, transitioning to lighter and darker shades as we move towards the upper right corner. There is also a slight haze that I would allow to pass just above the mountains. Along the line of the mountains, the color is a bit lighter, so I will opt for a clean brush and blend the colors with my finger. When blending, if we press too hard, you can definitely feel the amount of pressure needed with your finger. This is why using your finger can create very smooth and pleasing transitions. So I encourage you to try blending both ways. Additionally, it's important to note that the sky's vastness allows for a lot of creative freedom. You can experiment with different shades and tones to see what works best for your composition. The moon serves as a focal point, guiding the overall color scheme. The darker upper right corner adds depth and contrast, making the lighter areas stand out even more. The pinkish and bluish tones add a touch of vibrancy and can be adjusted to suit your preference. The gradient effect from the moon to the upper right corner creates a sense of movement and flow, drawing the viewer's eye across the canvas. The haze above the mountains adds a layer of realism, mimicking the natural atmospheric conditions. Blending with your finger allows for a more tactile and intuitive approach, giving you greater control over the final outcome. Remember, the key is to experiment and find what works best for you. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, as they can often lead to unexpected and beautiful results. So, take your time, enjoy the process, and let your creativity shine. The sky loves smooth transitions and gentle gradients, so we work very smoothly with the sky. You can gather all the brush strokes and marks in this way by going over the sky, but after each pass, I lightly wipe the brush so that the paint doesn't transfer to the right. This ensures that the colors remain distinct and do not blend unintentionally. I use a soft cloth or paper towel to gently clean the brush, making sure it is ready for the next stroke. I simply remove the traces of the brush in this manner, ensuring a clean and precise finish. This technique helps in maintaining the integrity of the artwork, allowing each stroke to stand out clearly and contribute to the overall composition. When blending, when applying the paint a little bit more carefully and precisely to the surface, we have the traces that were left behind still remain. Now these traces can be carefully picked up and examined. And now let's work with the gray mountains. Let's see what color now. Let's look at the color against the darkness. Such gray, the gray color of the mountains. And I suggest placing the light highlights on them immediately for a better, clearer, and more comprehensive and detailed understanding of the contrast. I can definitely take a smaller brush. Indeed, I'll take that brush that I used for the mountains. Indigo is there. In the brush, well, I'm just wiping off the excess with a napkin. And I mix it with white. There is definitely a feeling that there is a slight reddish tint actually present, slightly. White, indigo, and you can either add a variety of shades like brown or a little bit of carmine, such as when you take a moment to look up at the sky, you might notice that it appears somewhat dark and gloomy. The sky's grayish hue can give off a somber and overcast feeling, almost as if a storm is brewing in the distance. This particular shade of gray is not just limited to the sky. You can also observe it in the surrounding environment. For instance, the rocks around you might exhibit the same gray color, blending seamlessly with the overall atmosphere. The rocks, with their rough and rugged texture, seem to mirror the sky's mood, creating a cohesive and unified scene. This interplay between the sky and the rocks highlights the natural harmony in the landscape, where different elements come together to form a singular cohesive picture. On the side, I have some additional remaining stock left. We'll do it later on. The color of the lower rectangle is slightly ochre white lead. I carefully load the palette knife and gently emphasize under the moon. This is how I do it. So that it descends to the sea, I still start illuminating from above on the dark still. When discussing the gray color, it's important to note that even though this area is part of a distant background, there is still some texture that can be seen. This means that we can go back to our gray color using a palette knife. With this tool, we can create some interesting reliefs and textures. To do this, first load your palette knife with the gray paint. Then gently apply it to the canvas, making sure to vary the pressure to create different textures. You can add more layers to build up the reliefs, giving the background a more dynamic and realistic appearance. This technique helps in adding depth and interest to the painting, making the gray background more engaging and visually appealing. Here, to a lesser extent, we can apply a few strokes, and the tip is also a bit lighter. I take this color slightly. In this manner, let's take a leisurely stroll along the beautiful water, enjoying the serene and calming atmosphere. Let's actually look at that cyan in the background. Right where the sky ends, this kind of color begins. A darkened color of the sea wave. Black has already been worked on, and now we can add the top layer. Use the rectangle as a solid, stable, and secure base for the foam. A very successful color indeed for the absolutely very upper rectangle. It will resonate quite well with the mountains, especially during the early morning or late evening hours. It was indigo, white lead, and carmine, which are colors often used in traditional art. Just a drop of carmine, which adds a vibrant touch to the overall composition. At first, I definitely added some brown. Look, in principle, yes, brown will work well here. But this is just a little bit of everything. Mainly, of course, indigo. You can run over it like this with this gray color. Why? Because if we sit for a long time with a white canvas, it becomes increasingly difficult to show light. We also cannot depict light spots without dark ones. Therefore, as soon as the necessary light appears on our palette and in the painting, I try to immediately lay it out in color spots in as many places as possible. And in the foreground, the straight browns do not sound brighter. Well, for now, don't shine. During the first part of the lesson, everything may indeed seem so gloomy and dark, but this is absolutely necessary to convey light in the painting. Conveying light is indeed an incredibly complex and quite interesting activity. And it is indeed during such truly transitional states of nature like night, or conversely dawn, that we actually observe these very contrasts. The color of the lower rectangular shape. I will mix it now. Let's see if we can do without cyan, or if we definitely need it. White lead, indigo. Well, the color is similar, maybe a little greenish. I would add just a bit more yellow. If you want, you can add a tiny drop of cyan. It will create a slightly greener color, a slightly brighter color. By adding just a small amount of cyan, you can achieve a more vibrant and lively hue. This minor addition will enhance the overall brightness and make the color stand out more. But we are talking about an extremely tiny microscopic amount, just to add a touch of cyan color. Well, indigo is already blue. More blue, yes, with a hint. Then black, then gas soot. I will add gas black at the end, possibly to the dark areas, if the indigo stops being effective. I'm a bit more afraid to make it too blue, so I don't add any cyan color. Right now, I've added just a tiny bit of ultramarine blue. I add a little bit of yellow, and even more yellow, of course, we will have on the wave, which is absolutely beautiful. So, indigo, white lead. And you can use ultramarine, and you can add a little bit of yellow, which is a truly great color. The evaporation from the water slightly softens the horizon line. And you can definitely add more ultramarine here in closer proximity to the foam, and you can absolutely start working with it with a thicker consistency, since foam loves turbulence. Yes, it loves a large amount of paint. Waves love a large amount of paint as well. Ultramarine, indigo. It is quite dark here. Once we have indigo, we can see that there is a rather dark area. I leave the crest of the wave slightly intact so as not to lose its shape, and the wave itself is also quite dark as well. Here, I can use it for blending. You can gently and carefully rub to model the volume of the waves and foam, to create a more realistic effect in texture by adding more details. Well, it might be a bit early here. I want to add some yellow first, and then I can blend to the right. Ultramarine, indigo. I wipe the brush, then take a tiny amount of paint. And by the rustling of the brush, you can understand that there are minimal paints there. This base is for a base for the foam. We have some extra colors left. Now we will also paint the stones here together. The canvas is being filled with vibrant colors and intricate patterns, creating a beautiful and detailed artwork. We don't dive into details right away. We start with such smudges and underlayers. Here we darken the little stones simply with indigo, and now we can take those little rectangles that I just removed, because I will be painting there now. This is ultramarine, indigo, and a very tiny amount of white. And what we mixed with you based on brown, a small amount of. If we notice that this light has gone too dark, we will definitely return to black. We will see this now, or maybe at the end when we look from a distance. Small purple notes are flickering there. We still have purple color left, and we can add brown and indigo to the shimmering areas. If you see that it has become too bright, we can add now, or maybe it's not visible now, but will become noticeable later when we either fit it into a frame or look from afar. The very edges of the stones are glowing for us. When we observe the light, it is crucial to pay attention to the subtle changes in its intensity. The transition from light to dark can be gradual, and it is important to monitor these changes closely. The flickering of the purple notes indicates that there is still some vibrancy left in the color, and by adding brown and indigo, we can enhance the shimmering effect. If the light becomes too bright, it may not be immediately noticeable, but over time, as we view it from different angles or distances, the brightness will become apparent. The glowing edges of the stones add a unique touch to the overall appearance, creating a mesmerizing effect that draws the viewer's attention. By carefully adjusting the colors and monitoring the light, we can achieve the desired effect and create a visually stunning result. And we introduce one more color, green. Well, it's not fully represented here because the spectrum of green is vast and varied, but still let's look at the very light, translucent part of the wave, which can be seen as a hint of green. This is our color, and let's examine the calmer, more muddy green tones, such as olive or moss green. You can take a bit of green, for example, viridian, which is a deep, rich green, or you can mix it wonderfully with other colors. If we mix indigo and yellow, we can use ultramarine indigo and yellow, since different shades of blue mixed with different shades of yellow give various shades of green. For instance, mixing ultramarine with a bright yellow can give a vibrant green, while mixing indigo with a muted yellow can result in a more subdued green. So here we used indigo. At first we didn't use black because it would have immediately darkened everything. But now, when I mix green based on indigo, it doesn't interfere with the surrounding indigo at all. If he gets a little from both the stones and our base, it won't be a problem. Sweet like that. Gray-green. We can add a little more ochre right under the light source, but in order for these highlights to shine so brightly, we first need to create darkness, and then we can easily paint the highlights. To achieve this, we must carefully consider the placement of each stroke, ensuring that the contrast between light and dark is stark and well defined. This process involves layering the paint meticulously, allowing each layer to dry before adding the next. By doing so, we can build up the intensity of the highlights gradually, making them appear more vibrant and realistic. Water also loves smooth transitions. But unlike the sky, the color gradation can still remain horizontally, meaning there can be a greenish stripe and a pinkish stripe. This will indeed make working with water even more interesting. And there's a little corner here that also goes to a purple, but a much darker purple, mixing indigo with purple. Look, there must be some purple left on the palette from the sky. Add a little bit of indigo to it. By the way, there are such purple notes, and you can place them on the shore, like this, then blend them while we still have the color. And I still have a blending brush left over. This is prior to adding yellow right here in this spot. This mountain is glowing with a beautiful shade of yellow color. But if I add both yellow and purple at once, it will be difficult to work on them together properly, blend them well enough. Therefore, because of that reason specifically, I want to do it one step at a time so as not get rid of any white spots remaining there. Now first off, I will also blend ultramarine blue along with indigo right under all that foam. Bye! The rustling of the brush indicates that I am taking a little paint. So let's make the yellow area here first green to calm it down. And now we have this bright color. It actually came out on my palette when I took the yellow. But now I need to add some white here. And I can work with this color because it will get dirty in the process. If you are afraid of such brightness like this grassy spring color, you can add ochre. But on the canvas you can see that it is gradually losing its brightness because It mixes with the surrounding colors, which are darker. This is how I blend it like a wave, and I won't remove these color gradations. They will serve as a kind of foamy mesh. A little bit during the blending, I removed the paint layer so the canvas is exposed here. So let's make the yellow area here first green to calm it down. And now we have this bright color. It actually came out on my palette when I took the yellow, but now I need to add some white here, and I can work with this color because it will get dirty in the process. If you are afraid of such brightness like this grassy spring color, you can add ochre. But on the canvas, you can see that it is gradually losing its brightness because it mixes with the surrounding colors, which are darker. This is how I blend it like a wave, and I won't remove these color gradations. They will serve as a kind of foamy mesh. A little bit during the blending, I removed the paint layer so the canvas is exposed here. I will return it to you right now. I will bring back the paint and place it here. Additionally, I might even consider adding a touch of indigo to enhance the overall look. And this little bit of green goes in here too, although not in such a bright and sunny version. My brush has also gotten a bit dirty, so I think that due to the dirtiness, this green will be here, but it won't sound too excessively bright. Here's just another little note that I see right after indigo, a quick note. Here is the black base of the wave, and then there's a bright little highlight that looks nice. You can apply it with a palette knife. We have such rich colors today, so I don't want to lose them. I'm collecting them directly from the palette and adding textures and thickness here. At the same time, I will clean the palette now to move on to the mountains and the foam. So, our lower right corner is completely unadorned and devoid of any decoration, and we currently lack the rich and deep brown color of the background. We will let it dry for a little while. Of course, the paint won't dry completely here, but some of the excess oil will evaporate. Check thoroughly. Check to ensure there are absolutely no white spots left. This line of the wave's base is dark and shadowy, like this, even a bit of indigo here. Well, I believe that we can manage fine without the ultramarine. The light ultramarine here might add too much blueness, which could simplify the painting. Without the FC, we are forced to mix quite interesting shades thanks to indigo, ultramarine, and yellow. So please take a look and decide for yourself. There is Berlin blue, which is calmer than FC blue. If you still want more blue and find it insufficient, consider Berlin blue. Maybe you will decide to add it. Well then, I will remove our auxiliary rectangles, and now let's choose a brown color and continue from a distance, we can already take a look at the picture. If you're a bit tired, take a little break. I'm going to change the oil and clean the palette now. I've gathered what I needed here and tossed it into the water. These purple ones can also be gathered in a pile like this on the edge of the palette using a palette knife, because we will definitely need something from here for the foam. Well, having looked at our painting from a distance, we could actually round off the moon here. The paint has dried completely, and we can use a round brush or even a fingertip to achieve this effect. The color we take is not quite white, but rather similar to what we used for the distant mountains, which was ochre mixed with white. Alternatively, we could mix in a bit of Neapolitan yellow. Of course, we can use a little more Neapolitan yellow and ochre, but still mostly white. I am carefully rotating the brush around its axis to get a smooth, rounded shape. This technique allows us to create a more realistic and detailed moon in our painting, enhancing the overall composition and adding depth to the scene. You can walk around the little circle to slightly brighten. We have similar colors on the first rock. Let's go in order and enhance the brown ochres on it. You can focus on them with a brush or a small palette knife, whichever is more convenient for you. It can be easier to show the sharpness of the rocks with a palette knife. The brown ochres are quite prominent and can be highlighted effectively. Using a brush allows for more detailed work, while a palette knife can create sharper edges. Both tools have their advantages, so choose the one that suits your style and the effect you want to achieve. Remember, the goal is to make the rocks stand out. Well, a flat brush works too. Here it's important that you like the materials and that the tools suit you. I used indigo for the grinding. Now I can apply the paint more thickly. And I raise a little here ochre, here golden ochre, light ochre, brown indigo, with a touch of and a hint of to enhance the colors and bring out the details. The two rectangles that I brought to the screen are more about the illuminated, bright areas. And here is the rock that I am currently working on. There is a small light area, and it doesn't really have much yellow in it. The vertical nature of the strokes indicates that the rocks are quite sharp. The more movements we make with our tools, the more protrusions we get on the surface of our artwork. These protrusions add texture and depth, making the piece more dynamic and interesting. I give this little window. It conveys space very well and stretches the space when we place a small window between the rocks. This small window acts as a focal point, drawing the viewer's eye and creating a sense of depth and perspective. With the second layer, I work with the palette knife more thickly and give the final shapes at the top. The palette knife allows for thicker, more textured strokes, adding dimension to the piece. And now we have approached our rectangles with the color brown plus golden ochre, a golden hue. This combination of colors creates a warm, earthy tone that adds richness to the artwork. We don't fill in all the darkness, and this color is present in large quantities along with light ochre. The light ochre adds highlights and contrast, making the darker areas stand out more. By carefully balancing these colors, we create a harmonious and visually appealing composition. The process of layering and blending these colors is crucial to achieving the desired effect. Each stroke and color choice contributes to the overall mood and atmosphere of the piece. The interplay of light and shadow, along with the varied textures, brings the artwork to life, making it a captivating and engaging visual experience. Now, by the way, when meeting with indigo, it might give us some greenery. Well, maybe that's not so bad after all. Yellow, white, and ochre. Yellow, white, ochre. This is a very light, bright area filled with vibrant hues and shades, and it is bright because darkness runs alongside it, creating a stark contrast. At the boundary, the most contrasting place is formed, at the border of light and dark, where the interplay of shadows and light creates a dynamic and visually striking scene. There is a risk of potentially drowning completely and utterly in the overwhelming vast expanse of light. But we will return the darkness with a reverse movement if necessary. But I see that it is already necessary, while I am not sure that we need to introduce gas black. We will definitely have to add some darkness. You can play around with the mountains endlessly, because the more of these various movements you make, the more textured and intricate they will become over time. So please, you can work here for a long, extended period without any rush. Now I'm carefully lifting the black paint. There will be 2 seagulls, one gracefully positioned here, and one elegantly placed there. And here, the brown color sharply transitions into a vibrant yellow hue. I've run out of yellow paint, so I will mix it again. It was a combination of yellow, white, and ochre to achieve the perfect shade. And now we can incorporate the oranges. I'm currently removing our little rectangles because I will be painting there. By itself, yellow doesn't convey much to us. However, if we add darkness to it now, its resonance will certainly be enhanced. Light ochre and golden ochre are sometimes enough to let white pass through such darkness, for example, in various artistic contexts and techniques. We use white very carefully. It is a rather treacherous paint, and when it enters the darkness, it can ruin all the darkness for us, making it difficult to achieve the desired artistic effect. So if you notice such moments in certain situations or instances, we might potentially raise a shade of indigo or perhaps black color. You can even deviate a bit from the reference. The main thing is to understand that you might not be able to handle a large amount of paint right away. This is because handling a large amount of paint requires a certain level of skill and experience, which you might not have yet. You can even hear how the palette knife scrapes a little, which also indicates that I don't take paint by the ton. I use it little by little, because the transitions between light and shadow change very often, and I don't want to miss anything. This technique allows for more control and precision in the painting process. And right away we also cover the lower right corner with golden ochre. And the very corner even returns us to cobalt violet. This step is crucial as it adds depth and richness to the painting, enhancing the overall visual appeal. And here we also need ochre. Once we have determined the location of the brightest area on the mountains, we can proceed here. I added ochre in this way, using a palette knife, to carefully smear it back and forth, ensuring an even and smooth spread. The excess foam will gradually disappear as you continue to work on it. Yes, here the cobalt violet resonates with the opposite edge. If we go back, we were mixing cobalt violet with indigo there. Well, that's where the right lower corner ends. Well, let's try to introduce a little bit more of orange color to the mountains. If you think the golden ochre is not enough, here is the golden ochre. In its pure form, yes. For example, you can add it here to slightly push the yellow. I agree that this area has turned out to be quite large for the inclusion of some additional elements, but enthusiasts of more contrasting combinations can use cadmium orange. They can also mix it with ochre. Southern landscapes under contrasting lighting also love orange hues. I mixed cadmium orange with ochre because I wanted a color that was a bit more vibrant and slightly more vibrant than golden ochre. A little bit right on the tip of the brush, cadmium orange is quite a bright color. Now I will first look at the dark ones, which are quite interesting. Here, a division can be added, making it more detailed. The vertical nature clearly emphasizes the vertical arrangement of our cliffs, and majestic. They descend downwards, quite steeply. And here too, indeed in the darkness, some violet notes can be caught. Add a bit more yellow to the very tip, just like a little lemon. It shines there in two places, adding a little bit of brightness to the scene. This way, I can also make the tip of the wave a bit more delicate and slightly more subtle and a little lighter. And let's move on. Now let's practice a bit with the foam. I'll take a stiff brush with white paint. By the way, you can also use white paint that isn't too clean. The messier the brush, the better. Since a messy brush gives us such three-dimensional splashes, it creates a dynamic and textured effect that adds depth and complexity to the artwork, making it more visually engaging and interesting. Don't pick up too much paint either, as it will dirty the white paint a little bit as well. And by the way, this is just how I go about it now, not too thick, so that my gray underlayer, which we blended, shows through. She was shining through from there, in a way you could say, so to speak. I don't apply the brush. I hold my hand from above, guiding it from the top. This way the fluffiness will be greater. I primarily focus on this task around the boat because I have a strong desire to start painting the boat now. The boat has been a project of mine for quite some time, and I'm eager to see it come to life with a fresh coat of paint. We have already completed the first layer of paint on the boat, which is an important step in the process. This initial layer serves as a foundation, ensuring that the subsequent layers adhere properly and provide a smooth, even finish. The preparation and painting of the boat require careful attention to detail and patience, but the end result will be worth the effort. Look, do we need to make any adjustments to the tips and edges of the material? It's important to ensure that everything is perfectly aligned and smooth for the final presentation. Maybe if they got damaged or smudged in the process, it might be worth going over them one more time. Because the contours of the boat are quite dark from all sides. And with an extremely tiny and delicate little brush, I will now be a shade of gray. Look, we actually have all the paints on the palette already. Well, we can take some kind of gray, like from the stones, for example. A small brush with intricate details, oil paint, and I am making the seats with vibrant colors. In the process of applying 2 layers of oil, it is important to note that the first layer was applied without any oil. This ensures that the second layer of oil will glide smoothly and evenly over the surface. The absence of oil in the first layer creates a base that allows the second layer to adhere properly, resulting in a more effective and uniform application. This method is particularly useful in achieving a consistent finish and optimal performance of the oil coating. The near edge. It can be laid down. This is how we will paint the oars. I might even take a slightly different angle. Well, there can be some highlights from the water here. The very edge is quite black. The highlights from the incoming foam can beautifully bring our boat to life on the right and left, and more. I even overdid it a little bit. I need to make darker the reflection under the boat like this, and I extend this reflection here. But unfortunately, as you can see clearly now in detail, the contours aren't precise enough. In other words, we aren't mirroring exactly the boat itself precisely, but we do indeed need this bright something right here. Yes, indeed, we have light present there. Yes, absolutely. And also importantly, the water is shimmering. It needs to be slightly separated here, like the reflection from the boat. It's a bit too bright, of course. I will blend it in now. This is how it is done, in this manner. I would also like to very much emphasize this incoming wave with indigo and ultramarine, so that I can now indeed lay down the foam here. By the way, if anyone has trouble with straight lines, you can use a palette knife to paint. I load paint onto the edge of the palette knife. A straight line is formed, thus a fairly straight line is achieved. Here we have a boat in the cenote, which can be a small one, not white, but perhaps in Neapolitan, or maybe with some white paint left over. This edge should be made a bit brighter to match the moon, and this light. By the way, This light is too yellow. I would also tone it down a bit with Neapolitan to make it more subdued. And continuing to work with the waves in the background, this light from the mountains can be reflected. Just a little so as not to overexpose it, and it's better to place it right here on the crest of the wave, just slightly. The crest of the wave should only glow with indigo, so I push it back like this, and here the foam will go. And this slight shimmer shouldn't be spread over the entire area. Here the light areas are reflected, and with a calmer color, for example, like this, one can go over it. I want to avoid having waves here and none there, but again, I collect some paint to create the bubbling. Slightly more tranquil on the left side, since the edge of the canvas is purple in color. Here, the waves are not white because everything is in shadow. I cover the base of our rocks with them, and the waves break against the rocks to a somewhat lesser extent. To a greater extent, I can go over the lower edge of our foam with purple and on top with white. Well, this grey cover, I don't have the task of repainting it. It is definitely not worth repainting such a task. The goal is to enrich. The grey from the sky remained. I just diluted it with oil, and now I'm making the outline here. With a stiff brush, I continue to work, letting the waves flow. Don't take too much paint at once because we are gradually moving along, understanding how to distribute it and where to let the foam go. If you use a large amount of paint right away, it can be hard to manage. The foam goes over the top crest of the wave and splashes out. So this brush of mine is quite old, but it's perfect for painting foam and the crowns of trees. It is precisely because of this contrast that the foam shines. By the way, there is no goal to make it perfectly white, so during the process the color gets muddied, but that's actually great. If you see the brush is completely dirty, start from the edges because we do not make accents on the edges. And here too there is such foam behind our little stones. My brush is already quite dirty now as I go along the shore, painting the scene before me. The bristles are laden with various shades of blue and white, remnants of the waves and foam I've been capturing on the canvas. Look, there's another little detail here. The foam reflects in this spot, so I'm lightly going over the water here with gentle strokes. You can hardly see the paint at all. There's very little of it,
just a faint whisper of color. Gently, gently. The foam splashes up, creating a delicate pattern on the surface of the water. Here, a wave breaks against a stone, and it's quite bright here since this place is close to the moon, and it rises high, catching the light. The moonlight casts a silvery glow over the scene, illuminating the foam and the waves with a soft, ethereal light. With the leftover paint, I'm adding more foam, but I will definitely be working here now either with a liner or a number 1 brush. The liner brush is perfect for adding fine details, while the number 1 brush is great for broader strokes. I want to capture the movement and energy of the waves, the way they crash against the rocks and then recede, leaving behind a trail of foam. It's a delicate balance, trying to capture the essence of the sea without overworking the paint. The key is to work quickly and confidently, letting the brush do the work. As I continue to paint, I'm reminded of the many hours I've spent by the shore, watching the waves and studying their patterns. Each wave is unique, with its own rhythm and flow. It's a challenge to capture that on canvas, but it's also incredibly rewarding. The sound of the waves, the smell of the salt air, the feel of the breeze on my face, all of these things inspire me as I paint. I hope that when people look at this painting, they can feel a sense of the sea's power and beauty, just as I do. I create such fluffiness only with a bristle. Take a moment to carefully and thoroughly look around the stones, examining every detail and ensuring that everything is in order and appears as expected. If everything checks out and there are no discrepancies, we can then proceed to darken the stone here. This involves giving it a more defined and precise shape along the contour, enhancing its appearance. Additionally, we will allow a small amount of light to pass through, creating a subtle yet noticeable effect. A small strip of light is coming in, which will contribute to the overall visual impact, adding a touch of brightness and contrast to the scene. Us with you goes us with you goes us with you. And here, with a palette knife, I start adding a few dark accents. I need to be sure that the foam will play with a bit of darkness. After this reflection, I can skip a few dark stripes. I would also emphasize this foam. It was highlighted, but while working with a stiff brush, it got a bit lost. I want to emphasize the wave. And again, I want more darkness here. Two small stones also have a tiny, barely noticeable line of light on them, but it might be very unclear whether it's light or already waves. This is how they frame our stones, so I am very carefully using the brush along the lower edge. Now we will dip them into the water. You can take a little break to rest your eyes, because now we will be creating a net on the water. I use a liner brush with long bristles. You can use a size 1 brush as well. So, take a look at the size 1.
It can come with short or long bristles. If you don't have a long one, you will just need to pick up paint more often. There is no fundamental difference. It's just more convenient with a liner because it holds more paint. I want to mix not quite white, but rather a grayish color that I have here, which can include some yellow, but there is no yellow. It's too much. Better to stick with gray for now. There is yellow. Yes, that color will be needed, but not at the beginning. I thoroughly mix it with some oil to ensure even distribution. And now I proceed to connect these specific vibrations carefully and precisely. A little slightly and gently vibrating movements. And here, I really just want a little bit of light. By the way, you can even start from the bottom to catch this paint and slightly cut the light with a darker color. This technique is particularly useful when you want to create a gradient effect or add depth to your painting. As for the upper wave, I feel that it lacks a bit of violet darkness, specifically indigo violet, right at the very crest. Adding this color can enhance the overall look and feel of the wave, making it appear more realistic and dynamic. I think I need to add a bit more oil right at the very top, at the crest itself. This will help in blending the colors more smoothly and give a more polished finish. I also emphasized the white and highlighted the yellow as well. These highlights are crucial in bringing out the vibrancy and contrast in the painting, making it more visually appealing. Indigo violet, along with a small amount of oil, is used in this process. By doing it this way, it allows the mixture to hang and adhere even more effectively, ensuring better results. I use violet to avoid over-lightening and ensure the colors remain balanced, because now everything we do will involve adding light and creating a harmonious blend. This is the darkness we have. And now if you mix white with yellow, you might already have it mixed to the perfect shade. We use this color right under the moon for those gliding highlights on the water, creating a serene and beautiful effect. And they definitely go down far as well indeed. White and yellow. I can display the color on the screen, but keep in mind that you won't be working on a white canvas. We have even shown this color before. He could remain in this position, staying still and unmoving from the vantage point of the rocks, observing everything around him without making a sound or drawing any attention to himself. The Neapolitan will muddy the colors, so I still suggest mixing white with yellow. There will be more white, of course, and less yellow. Neapolitan can definitely muddy things up, but here I want brightness. By the way, don't overdo it with it either, because when there's too much, it will be less noticeable. So everything is probably too bright, which means the overall lighting is excessive and overwhelming. It would be better to work a bit more on the grid to ensure a balanced and visually appealing layout. I combine the work with a bristle liner brush size 1, which is a very fine and precise tool, perfect for detailed work. I don't use white paint in this process. Instead, I opt for a dirty grayish color that has a slightly muddy appearance. This color is quite liquid and contains a lot of oil, which helps in achieving smooth and fluid strokes. Additionally, when working with the liner brush, it's important to roll it between your fingers. This technique ensures that the threads of light created by the brush strokes are diverse and varied, adding a natural look to the painting. We aim to create a delicate foam effect, and to do this, I hold the brush almost by the very tip. This grip allows the brush to move very freely and lightly across the canvas. As I paint, I transition from the edges to lighter colors, but these colors are still brighter than the moonlight. It's crucial to note that there won't be any stark white highlights on the foam. Instead, I added just a bit of white to the gray mass I was painting, only a small amount to maintain the subtlety. You can draw the edge of the foam with small, precise dots to enhance the texture. Always remember to step back and look at your work from a distance. This perspective helps in ensuring that the overall darkness and lightness are balanced, as we can't remove all the darkness once it's applied. This methodical approach ensures that the painting has depth and a realistic appearance, capturing the essence of the scene being depicted. I already noticed that it is becoming less and less, and it's becoming critical. Perhaps I will have to return it now. I will also make a slightly empty corner like this, with such a light stroke, a bit more, and slightly more like this, with such a light stroke. There may be a situation where I provided too much detail on this corner. I slightly overloaded it. I will now darken it back with light. I slightly overloaded it with brown and purple colors as well. And I will even add some here using such strokes of the palette knife, because this darkness, in a darker variant, reflects beautifully against the ochre. And since we moved from light to shadow on the hills, we also have reflections. Plus we have a boat reflecting here. Here, various shades of brown, purple, and indigo are used in the finishing touches. This darkens the right side, focusing on the center. That is those moments from which I started when I went everywhere with black color, and as I suspected, some dark spots faded during the blending, but that happens in the process. By the way, make sure that this yellow doesn't fade too much. Well, the hill ends like this, and it reflects like that. Now I need to look from a distance. Maybe I'll add something else. For example, I see that here the ultramarine shadow is too sharp, and here it is completely absent. So I add it to this wave because when the wave rolls in, it casts a shadow on the sand. This is exactly the shadow. However, in this particular situation, there is an excessive amount of it present, so I am going to distribute it more evenly and spread it out a little bit more now. Additionally, this will help in managing the overall balance and ensure that everything is more evenly distributed. I carefully hide this shadow under the foam in some places. By the way, you can pick up the foam on the wooden part of the brush like this and distribute it point by point, or you can use small, gentle, and controlled movements. Now I'll take a look from a distance. I might work with darker moments, like this, and we'll be finishing up. From afar, let's check the water to ensure the horizon level is even and straight. Here I have 2 drops that I will also eliminate and will let the eyes rest a bit, allowing them to relax and adjust. Well, I looked from a distance and our wave looks beautiful and shines brilliantly. Now the seagulls against the dark background will also add their accent, creating a striking contrast. I might still add a little bit of thin oil somewhere in the darkness, and here behind the boat, everything looks very blurred and indistinct. You can add as much detail as you have the strength for, enhancing the overall composition. Let's see where it's empty. Here we can add a little glare, and we can also let some foam flow through the stone, creating a dynamic effect. Otherwise, they turned out to be too heavily loaded and black, which might not be the desired effect. The water might not even have a glare. Perhaps the water also came in and shines on them, adding a reflective quality and a shimmering effect. The water might not even have a glare. Perhaps the water also came in and shines on them, adding a reflective quality and a shimmering effect. To add a little bit of fluffiness to your painting, you can gently use the tip of the brush to create soft, delicate strokes. This technique helps to introduce a subtle, airy texture that enhances the overall appearance. I have decided that I don't want to use a bristle brush here anymore because it tends to smudge the dark areas of my painting. Sometimes when I use a brush, it creates a result that is too even and lacks the texture I am aiming for. To achieve a more varied and interesting texture, I often use a palette knife instead. Alternatively, I might directly load the brush with paint to get the desired effect. The foam I am working with is quite fluffy, which can be challenging to manage with a bristle brush. Therefore, I prefer not to work with bristle brushes anymore and opt for other tools that give me better control and a more satisfying outcome in my artwork. I can completely remove all the darkness from it, and entirely. I actually already have very little darkness here. Therefore, it's better to control the wood here a bit. So, as I previously mentioned, the dark shades, which can be indigo with brown, are quite versatile. I will also add just a little bit more to enhance the overall effect. Indigo brown, very thin. This is how yellow ends. Look at this spot and pay attention to how the yellow shine finishes. There is an adequately dark green, brown, green there, which is produced by the mixing of indigo and brown. I did not use any blue FC, green FC, or viridian green. Indeed, this is definitely something to note. In favor of these more noble, shall we say, grays, I was just afraid of overdoing it with green and blue. I think we have created a beautiful piece, from a distance indeed. Please take a look at the photo. You can photograph it and look at the images. When we paint landscapes, indeed, the photo conveys well, and you can see what can be added or improved indeed. Checking landscapes this way is very effective indeed. Now for the wave to hang over, I probably need to add a bit more darkness here, but not too pronounced indeed. I will definitely do it light, probably. Well, very carefully. It's done very, very carefully. There is such an effect that the wave is reflected back at us. By the way, I managed without gas soot. Send us photos of your works and write in the comments whether you used green and blue or mixed a lot yourself. We achieved this result because we mixed a lot. There are just so many shades on the palette. All of them resonate with each other and interact harmoniously. On the canvas, let's put a signature. Let's see, maybe we will want to add something else here. Let's see. The frame often sometimes emphasizes certain aspects, and perhaps you will want to add something else to the document or the note. I will make sure to sign it for you without any hesitation. And I will look at the frame carefully. I want to see a light one and a dark one, both in detail, and examine them closely. Both frames are the only thing I might add some soot to, which is essential for the boat, to give it a more authentic look. So, this is the option we have.
The stones got lost. These stones got lost. And we need to find them to ensure they match perfectly. However, this particular shade of indigo did not absorb the soot as expected. Instead of using it in the usual manner, I will most likely apply it directly onto the brush in this specific way. By doing so, I can ensure that the color is distributed evenly and achieves the desired effect. This method allows for greater control over the application process, ensuring that the final result is both precise and aesthetically pleasing. The direct application technique is particularly useful in situations where traditional methods fall short, providing a more reliable and consistent outcome. Therefore, I will proceed with this approach, carefully applying the indigo to the brush and then to the surface, ensuring that each stroke is deliberate and contributes to the overall composition. You can also add some small dots here and there. From a distance, all of this intricate detail will be visible, so make sure to look at your work from afar during the final stages to ensure everything looks cohesive. Let's refresh the white color. There are even seagulls there. This seagull is even lemon-colored. Now we will paint it, just don't make it yellow. Moderately. Lemon. Seagull. We carefully choose a place for it that is not the most brightly lit. The little wing is to one side and thoughtfully placed. And the wing goes in the other direction. The first one turned out a bit too thick. Now I will carefully proceed to tighten the surrounding colors in a manner similar to this. By doing so, we ensure that the colors are more cohesive and visually appealing. This method helps in achieving a more unified and harmonious look. In this way, the overall appearance becomes more polished and professional, enhancing the aesthetic quality of the design. So, we have two small and beautiful white and elegant seagulls. They are right there, at the base of the large stones above the crashing waves. From the center to one side and then to the other. But there is a thick layer of paint here, so you need to pick up the paint separately for each wing, 1 and 2. You can add even more seagulls as you wish. Well, this is the story we have created together today. I was very happy to paint it with you. Send us photos of your works and paint along with us. Until we meet again, dear friends. Goodbye.